Hey, do you prefer to find the joy in life, or do you just want some help with that? If so, you're in the right place. So come on in and join the Joy Bunny clan. This is the My Slice of Life podcast. Welcome to the My Slice of Life podcast with me, Sharon, your very own Highland host, and also one of the last Scots to actually get into Outlander. I've just started watching it and I've got to be honest, I can't get enough. I don't want any spoilers because I'm still on season 1, but I'm just blown away by it, so I had to mention it. But I know that's not why you're here, so I will say no more about it. This season of the podcast is called Let's Get Gardening, not Let's Get Into Outlander, and this week is all about gardening mistakes. What are some of the main ones and how to avoid them? Now, you can't avoid some mistakes. We all make them. We have to, don't we? Because that's the best way to learn sometimes. I mean, I should be an expert by now by the number of mistakes I've made. But I'm not, clearly. I do try to pay more attention now, and I've got a good feeling about this year at the allotment, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed. And that's despite, I don't know about where you are, but we have had horrendous weather. The start to the season has not been good. The slugs and snails are attacking everybody, but I'm still optimistic. But before we crack on, I would just like to remind you to give the episode a like, leave me a wee comment, spread the word, let's get this podcast growing like a happy wee weed on a sunny hill, and increase the number of joy bunnies everywhere. Thank you. If you don't know what I mean by joy bunnies, well, where have you been? That's all I can say. Where have you been? It came up, I can't get rid of it now. Now, back to the gardening mistakes. There are plenty to choose from, but I've picked some of the more common ones and ones which are probably the easiest to fix for today's episode. So these are ones, if you've done them, don't worry, you can fix it. Now, they're not in any particular order either, but I am going to start with this one, and I think this is a mistake a lot of us do. Taking on too much. Now, maybe you've taken on a big allotment and you don't actually have time for it. That is a very common mistake on allotments. Luckily, we were able to start with a small one and then progress up to a bigger one. Or trying to get too much done at one time. Like, we're wanting to reinvent the whole garden at once and we just want to do everything all together. But I would say divide any job you've got into smaller, more manageable chunks and work steadily on one at a time. And be realistic. Do you have the time for what it is you're wanting to do? Maybe you've got a list of like 5 things you want to do, but you've got 15 minutes. So be realistic. What can you get done in the 15 minutes? It might not be your main priority. So be realistic about your time and what you can actually do. Maybe you've got help. I don't know. So put all that together and you can overcome that first common mistake. Another very common mistake, believe it or not, is growing things you don't like. I've mentioned it before, but there is no point growing something just because it's easy or, and this happens a lot, someone else has recommended it to you. If you don't like it, don't grow it. It really is as simple as that. Maybe you don't know you don't like it until you've grown it, and that's fair enough. That's how you learn. I've grown things before turnip, if I'm honest. I have grown a lot of turnip over the years, and really, no one in this house likes it, so I don't grow it anymore. So don't grow things you don't like, unless you're, a masochist of some sort, in which case you crack on and plant what you can't stand. Go for it. Good luck with that. But back to reality, another very common mistake is overwatering. Just as it sounds, we get carried away and we think we're helping our plants by drowning them. What you really need in a plant is a good, strong root system, and that doesn't happen unless it's encouraged to go look for water now and again. So think about it. If you keep adding on more and more water, those roots don't have to go anywhere to find it. They'll never grow. They never develop. Whereas if it dries out now and again, I mean, it doesn't have to be completely till they're wilting, but just enough to encourage them to go looking for water, they will grow stronger. That's why we're often told to let plants dry quite a bit between watering more than you would think. I mean, obviously there are exceptions, but it is something to be aware of. So check the soil moisture just stick your finger in the soil. Quite often it can be dry on the top, but it's still got moisture underneath, just underneath the surface. So if you're only looking at the top and judging it by that, that's how you get tricked really into thinking, oh, I need to give it some more water. You might not need to. So check the soil level before you do, because that excess water, you're drowning the roots, and that can actually lead to root rot, and we definitely don't want that. Okay, another very easy mistake to make is ignoring sunlight requirements. Hand up, I've done it. It's such an easy one to ignore. I mean, I have been caught out quite a few times with this one. I'm frying shade-loving plants, or I'm putting sun lovers in a shady spot. We've all done it, and it's so simple to fix. Just check the label or look it up. I mean, have a look around your area. What is growing well for others? And don't be afraid to ask either. I mean, if you see someone in their garden and you spot something that's thriving, ask them about it. Most gardeners love to talk plants and share information. It's getting us to shut up that's the problem. So just do that little bit of research on it. Or like I say, if you're trying to grow something but it's not working for you, but you see it thriving in someone else's garden, try and get a chance to say to them, how'd you get it to grow like that? Mine's not doing very well. Boom, you're in. They'll tell you everything. That brings me on to soil health. So many people ignore this, and you know what? It's dawned on me that I feed the soil on the allotment every year, but there are a couple of areas in the garden which I've neglected quite a bit, when it comes to feeding, so I've put that on my list of gardening jobs. I need to get that sorted. Easiest way, use compost to feed the soil, and you don't need as much as you think you do, but it makes a huge difference. Now, if you follow Charles Dowding like I do with his no-dig gardening, if you're in America, you'll know it as no-till. He just feeds his soil once a year with about 2 inches of compost. That's it. Might not even be, sometimes it just gets an inch of compost in places. It's not as much as you think, but do it every year. Ignoring this can really lead to nutrient deficiencies and poor growth, and you don't want that. And you don't actually necessarily need fertilisers. Again, Charles Dowding doesn't use them, except just maybe a little bit of seaweed here and there. He'll tell you to feed the soil because the microbiome in there, that's what you're feeding. And once you've done that, the rest takes care of itself. I still see people on the allotment and they grow year after year and they never feed the soil. They'll put wood chip down on their path, but they're never feeding the soil. The harvest looks really poor, if I'm honest. The weeds are great. The weeds will grow anywhere, but the actual crop they're growing, personally, it just looks like a waste of time to me. So feed your soil, get it as healthy as you can. Your plants really will thank you for it. And speaking of plants, what about this for a gardening mistake? Right plant, maybe. Wrong place. It's funny, I keep seeing on the internet they write things like, wrong plant, wrong place. But I don't agree with that. If you like the plant, but it isn't thriving, it isn't the plant that's wrong. It's the placing, it's the environment that you're asking it to grow in. And again, I'm sorry, but it is worth doing just a little bit of research to find out if they're cold hardy, frost resistant, drought tolerant, wind tolerant. All that kind of thing will help you put your plants in the right place to begin with, and make sure your plant will actually suit your climate. I see a lot of videos on YouTube and they're growing things outdoors and I'm just like, wow, I would never get away with doing that here. Your own climate does make a big difference. And also, check how big your plant will grow before you plant it. I mean, an area can look pretty empty with, say, 2 little pumpkin plants or 2 courgettes, or zucchini as you might call them, but they get really big really quickly. So it's good to know how much space they need, to avoid overcrowding. Plants don't thrive if they can't get the space they need. Some aren't quite so bothered about it, but some definitely are. And if you're going to overcrowd, like your courgettes and things, they're not going to perform well for you. So check how big that plant will grow. Quite often it's surprising how much space they actually need, so it is worth finding that out. And something else which can take up the space and is a very common gardening mistake is not weeding often enough. Guilty. I know I don't do this often enough, but I am working very hard to increase this actually, especially on the allotment where the weeds are they're just too much competition for the veg, and that's what they are. They are competition for your plants. If I'm honest, I'm not so bothered about some of the weeds in the garden because some of them are pretty useful. I mean, I've got dandelions, cleavers, garlic, mustard. They're all useful and they all provide ground cover for me, which I need, until I have something else that I want to plant out there. But that ground cover, it helps keep the neighbours' cats out, as they love nothing more than a nice, clean, weed-free toilet. Need I say more? I leave the weeds in place at the moment. At the front I've got 2 kind of borders, and I will leave my weeds because as long as they're there, the cat can't get in. It's disgusting. That's all I'll say. It is disgusting. The allotment, however, is a different story. I don't get a long growing season really, so I have to do as much as I can to help my plants thrive. And the weeds, like I said, they are just too much competition. So if I can't get an area cleared, I will at least try to get the flowering weeds so they don't get a chance to develop seeds and drop them because, oh yeah, they will. A little bit of wind, those seeds will cover your entire garden. Have you heard the old saying? 1 year seeding, 7 years weeding. Don't forget that. Don't let you see a little weed, right, and it's got flowers on it. That means seeds, that means problems. Get it out. If nothing else, get the flower ones out first. Easiest ways to get them out, it ranges from actually pulling them out, and if you're no dig, I'm finding this year they're much easier to come out. Or you can just hold them, or use mulch of some sort to smother them. Smother those blighters so that they will not thrive and take up nutrients, light, water, space that your plants need. So it is really worth doing, and I'm trying my best this year to get on top of them. Because once they take over and they get a hold, it's much harder to deal with that problem. So again, little and often, get the job done. Now another gardening mistake which I am guilty of, hands up, sowing or planting at the wrong time. Yeah, I've done this too. The panic as the season progresses and I've just discovered some seeds that I didn't start, or something's just sprung into life and I've maybe put the seed in and it didn't show and eventually it comes up and I'm thinking, oh, it's a bit late. But you know what? I've chanced it anyway. I've chanced it. Doesn't work, usually for me. Have you done that? I bet we all have at some time, haven't we? So for this one, I will say trying to sow and plant out at the right time. Sometimes life intervenes and our plans don't work out, so we can try our best to get sowing and planting done at the best, or at least the most opportune times. And let's be honest, like I was saying, the weather here for our sowing season, it's been awful. So sometimes you do everything you can. You've got your plan in place, you're working to your schedule, but if you haven't got the weather, I can't get things planted out. So this would be the time for me to get a lot of stuff out. In fact, the last 2 weeks I should have got a lot of stuff out, and I can't. It's just too cold. So I'm trying to plant out and sow at the right time. Now, I'm sorry to do this to you, but I am going to mention it. Pruning. Ah yes, the dark arts of pruning. Something I'm definitely not an expert at. And we do tend to fall into 2 categories with this. We either gently snip here and snip there in some sort of frightened state, or we jump right in and start attacking like Edward Scissorhands on steroids. Guess which one I am. Another issue is pruning, though, at the wrong time of year. I do know for my fruit trees, for example, the stone fruits, that's my plum and cherry trees, they have to be pruned in the summer. If I prune them in the winter, there's a really high chance that they're going to get a disease in and it's just going to rot them. I think, is it silver leaf? Something like that. But in the winter, because it's so cold, they can't heal the cuts. When you're pruning, they don't heal so well. So you can actually encourage a lot of fungal disease, and that's what we don't want. Rule of thumb is, if it is a tree that grows stone fruits, prune them in the summer. You might think, why prune? Just let it grow. But pruning will help keep your plants and trees under control, which I really need to do here because they're meant to be dwarf ones and they're growing a bit bigger than I want them to. But it also helps with shaping, and that helps with airflow, and it also encourages more fruit growth. So if you have something which needs pruned, again, and I not great at this, but it really is worth doing just a little bit of research to get an idea of how to do it. Don't worry about doing it wrong. I mean, everybody does it a little differently, so it is worth doing. And don't panic. Just don't attack it. It's a job we can't ignore. We have to do it. So we need to just, what is it they say? Feel the fear and do it anyway. I mean, I cut back an apple tree that I have in a tub. I cut it back in the winter, and I really cut it back. It was leggy, it was leaning over, very weak. So I gave it a severe pruning. And this year, although there's not many apples on it, it's growing a lot better. It looks stronger. There's a lot of leaf growth, and it looks a lot healthier. So I'm happy. It's worked well. So it is something that's worth doing. Another garden mistake I do see a lot more on the allotment, I would have to say, is depending on bug sprays or pesticides. I know not everybody grows organic. I mean, this one is probably obvious. I think it's obvious, but it's surprising how many people I still hear saying that they're just going to spray it with this or spray it with that. The thing is, often there will be like a biological control which makes its own way to your plant, so it can help to learn what kind of critters you get in your area, you know, just so you've got an idea of what's going to be coming to attack whatever it is that you're finding on your plants. Or you can buy in some things to help these wee nematodes. You can buy them, put them on your plant, and they will, you know, grow whatever bug it is that attacks your problem. But a good example of kind of the natural way is like if you've got black fly, they'll go for your broad beans, and people panic when they see them, and they want to reach for the sprays. But if you wait, if you can wait just a little, or get the ladybirds in, they'll come and deal with them, no problem. Get the ladybirds in, and if you make your garden enticing to the good guys, like the ladybirds and the frogs and so on, you're going to have a lot less problems with the bad guys. There are natural ways of doing it. It can take time. If you have never done anything to encourage the good ones, if you've always seen all bugs as a problem, but growing wildflowers, putting in a little pond, all these little things will help. You don't necessarily need to start reaching for chemicals. Like I say, try the nematodes if that's a route you want to go down. Often just hosing them off. You get the hose and put it on that jet set, hose them off. That works as well. You can get special soaps that you can wash them down with. They won't come back. Or just sticky tape. Get a bit of tape and get those bugs off. There's lots of alternatives to sprays and pesticides and all that yucky stuff that really, I don't want that on my plants. I don't think many of us now do, but like I said, I do still hear more people than I should talking about doing that. This next one's really related to the right plant, wrong place. It's linked to that. It's plant spacing. Because we want to cram in as many plants as we can, don't we? Whatever area we have. And I am pretty guilty of this, more in the garden, because I don't have a huge area, and I'll get a packet of seeds or I'll find a nice little plant. I think, oh, that'll look nice. And then I'm thinking, where am I going to put it? So I'm cramming it in. Actually, I cut back the grass a little bit more every year to make more space for the plants. Now, having said that, I do need to be more careful about the allotment. I mean, some plants just need more space. Like I said earlier, courgettes get big. But carrots won't grow well if they're too overcrowded. You get these little pathetic, horrible, weedy little things that aren't any use to anybody. Garlic needs its own space. It does not like competition. So there are some which you cannot cram them in. So again, like I was saying, a little thought about how big the plant is going to grow, whether or not they're going to be happy to party with some buddies. All that kind of knowledge will help you grow healthier and happier plants. Because I did mention a couple of episodes ago, some plants are happy to grow with their mates. I talked about multi-sowing. You can multi-sow things like beetroot, onions, leeks. Some plants can cope with it, but there are some plants that just can't, and they want their own space. So again, that is a very common garden mistake, but it is an easy one to fix. And another easy one to fix, I love this term, mulch volcanoes. Have you heard of that? Now we know mulching is good for weed suppression to help keep the moisture in the soil, but a mulch volcano, in case you didn't know, that's when the mulch is piled up and all around the stem, you know, the main stem or the trunk of a plant or a tree. I think trees get this more often than plants. Say you're putting wood chip down and we pile it up round the tree and make sure no weeds get around that trunk, and we just pile it up and it looks like a mulch volcano. But it's better, much better, to mulch it up to the trunk but leave a little gap all the way around it. Because if you do pile that mulch up. Yes, it keeps the moisture in, but that can encourage rot and fungus in the tree or in your plant, and you obviously don't want that. So you want to mulch close, but not too close. You'll be doing a great job just mulching close to it. You don't have to go all the way up and all the way around in a mulch volcano. Let's not have any of them. Another gardening mistake, which you might not have considered to be a gardening mistake, is not looking after your tools. You know the old saying, look after your tools and they will look after you. I am saying this, and I know full well I have a spade, a fork, and a couple of other things outside in the garden right now. And we had thunder and lightning yesterday. I'm recording this on the 15th of June. We had thunder and lightning yesterday. I keep telling myself though that I'm in the middle of a job, which I am, and I'm going to get back to it any second. So it's just easier for me to leave them there. I know it is easier for me, but I know it's not good for the tools. We have a shed, and I should use it, and there's no excuse, just laziness. I also know I need to clean them up and sharpen a couple of them. I've got shears, which could definitely do with a good clean up and a sharpen. And I've got one of those, the half moon cutters. That is a great tool, very useful for doing my edges, but I do need to take better care of it. I know that myself. So ask yourself and be honest. Do you take care of your tools? Are there any jobs you need to get done to protect them a little better? I'll tell you actually one area that I keep forgetting about, and that's the wooden handles, because they don't all have wooden handles anymore, do they? But I've never treated them with anything to keep them in good condition, so that is something I'll need to get to. And if you're in the same boat, get yourself some linseed oil to give them a good clean and treat them with some of that oil. So that is something that I'll need to get to. I'll be happy knowing if I'm not the only one who is cleaning my wooden handles and oiling them with linseed oil. And that actually brings me on to a gardening mistake I bet you haven't considered. Not looking after yourself. This is a major one. That you've gone out into the garden, you're all full of inspiration and good ideas, and you don't realise how much bending, lifting, twisting that you've done, and then you can't move for 3 days. We've all done it. We soak in the bath, we're in agony, but at the same time we're happy we've got so much done, but we also realise that we should have paced ourselves a bit better. I mean, they recommend warming up before you do any major gardening. Just a bit of stretching can do wonders to prevent injury. Don't forget to wear gloves if you need them, and goggles if you need them. If you're using a wood chipper or you're pruning something, you've got bits flying all over the place, protect your eyes. The bottom line is this. The garden will be there. It isn't going anywhere. So you really don't have to kill yourself looking after it. That's not necessary. So look after yourself. And the final gardening mistake I have for you today is not asking for help. This is actually related to the previous one. I know, you can do it all. You don't need help. But sometimes we do. And we need to ask for it. Because let me tell you one thing I do know. Nobody is going to volunteer to help you out. You need to ask. So if there is something that you really need a hand with, please get the help you need. Don't try to do it yourself and end up injuring yourself or making a total disaster of whatever job it is you're doing. Ask for help if you need it, please. And there you have it, my friends. That is my list of the most common gardening mistakes and how to fix them. So I hope you were taking notes, by the way. There'll be an exam at the end of this. Don't forget to check out the links below. Give me a like and a follow, and I'll be back next week with another topic to encourage us all to get and keep gardening. But until then, you take care of your wee self.